I am so excited for you guys to get to meet Dr. Edith Shiro and just like enjoy all her insights. You're going to learn a lot. So I'm just going to leave her here and thank you so much for joining us.
Andrea, thank you so much for this invitation and to be able to talk to the community of yachting and the boating community. So very happy to be talking today about some of the struggles and the traumas that are related to the mental health in the community of people in boats or in yachts, and what happens. As a clinical psychologist, I've had some experience in working with this population living in Miami. We have a lot of people from cruise that are coming in and that are requesting therapy sometimes. So I've had some of that experience. And one of the things that I notice is that there are certain issues that have to do with mental health that are very particular and unique to the yachting community and to the crew, the passengers, and even the people that are working on board. And some of it has to do with the very, very particular circumstances in which people are surrounded when they are working in such an environment. Why? There are very specific things that happen working on boats. One of the things that really stands out is the isolation. And what do I mean by that? I mean that a lot of the times people that are working on the boat are very much distance from their regular support systems and family, friends, people on land. So you find yourself in the middle of the ocean, sometimes with no emotional support, no psychological support. And sometimes it's not an issue at all, but there are times in which that would really play a big important role. Another issue that comes up a lot has to do with cultural diversity. You are coexisting and living together in the same environment for a long period of time, not just one day or 1 week, but sometimes it's many weeks, many months, with a group of people that are very, very diverse, meaning like they have very different cultural backgrounds, habits, routines, belief systems, and there's really a demand to coexist, to tolerate, to live together in a closed up environment that sometimes it might be challenging. Sometimes it's hard to sleep together, eat together, work together, have fun together with people that might be people that you don't know. And a third thing that happens usually in this kind of very particular and unique communities is that there's no boundaries and no breaks between work and personal time, or environments in which you can distinguish between when you're working or when you're having fun, when you're being social, when you're being personal, when you want to be with family, when you want to be with friends, or when you're on call when you're working. Usually these are long hours, but from my understanding is that people work for many hours, sometimes more than 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And the break between working and personal time is blurry sometimes. So these are things that definitely affect our mental health. These are things that definitely take a toll on how we have a balanced life, an everyday harmonic life in which you can, pay attention to work and pay attention to your personal needs. A lot of the times, my understanding is that keeping a routine, a healthy routine, is not so easy. For example, being able to exercise every day, sleep enough hours, eat healthy and properly at the required times, do some things that are good for your soul and for your psyche in terms of reading and having a hobby, playing music, dancing. It might not go together with the routine or the demands of being on board. So these are things that are really take a toll on the well-being of the community and the people that are working on board. These are and I'm saying this and I'm mentioning this because they are not it's not that it's just doesn't happen anywhere else, but in the environment of being in the yacht or being on board or being in a seafarer, these are very, very particular circumstances. And all of this influence and affect the well-being of the person. I find also that some of the times people are very excited to work on board, to be part of the yachting community without really realizing what it means. Sometimes people have like the very distorted idea of like, oh, it's all fun and games and being in the ocean and being on a cruise or being on a yacht. It's so much fun without really realizing that it requires certain things from the person. For example, being stable emotionally, having enough of a regulatory system inside where you can moderate and regulate your emotions, knowing that there are going to be outside demands in terms of like how much you work, how much you sleep, how much you interact with other people. It's not sometimes you don't have time for yourself. There's not enough time for space, for personal space. So these are things that sometimes people ignore, and when they find themselves in the middle of a situation, they might not have the tools or the resources to deal with it. So part of my conversation here is to really highlight and emphasize some of these things and how this can be triggering for trauma, from past trauma, for other personal experiences, and how, how we develop the tools in the emotional resources to deal with this.
When you are coexisting as a group, and it doesn't matter if you're you're the leader of the community, you're the staff, you have coworkers or your passengers, and you're coexisting and relating within one environment for many days or many weeks or many months, things happen, right? Everybody brings their own agenda, their own baggage, their own understanding of life. And the difficulty with that is that there's no breaks and there's no going out or moving away or moving out or keeping distance sometimes because of because of the situation. So if we are, I'm going to give you an example. If a person that has been working in a boat feels like their boss or the person above them is not treating them well, or is sexually harassing them, or is being inappropriate sexually or emotionally, where do they go? What do they do? What are the alternatives? What kind of things can happen? A lot of the times there's not a structure in place that can determine, there's a committee or a department or a group of people that are in charge of dealing with it. Sometimes it doesn't happen on board. Sometimes the consequences of reporting a situation like that can be very, very big. And sometimes people can lose their jobs or get fired or not be believed or being treated badly if they were to talk about it or report it. And then, I mean, this happens also in land, but the fact that it's isolated, the environment is isolated on board makes it, I think, a little more difficult, and that increases the intensity of the situation. Another thing that happens is that sometimes people come into working on boats and yachts thinking that this is a fun thing, then they're going to be traveling, seeing new places, it's partying and it's fun, and probably a lot of that is true too. But they might not be prepared for what it's like to be coexisting with a group of people on and off, day in and day out, isolated from the rest of the world in some ways, in the middle of the ocean. And that requires mental health preparation. That requires psychological preparation. In my experience, people that have had certain understanding and processing their own issues have an easier time when faced with difficulty, with adversity, with challenges, than people that are disconnected or disassociated or unaware of their own issues when coming into a situation like this. So it can happen that levels of anxiety might raise, levels of depression might increase, People might feel more unsupported. People feel more without having their everyday tools or resources to support themselves emotionally. They might have emotional dysregulation, and they might not have the people, places, things to be able to take care of themselves. So being aware and becoming aware of these issues is extremely important. Another issue that happens is also, how is it for a person that is working on the boat, on sea, able to tolerate, to accept, and to coexist with other crew members or passengers that are very, very, very different in terms of cultural beliefs, in terms of habits, everyday habits, in terms of food, smell, way of talking, way of relating, way of dressing. All these variables can sometimes affect the person's everyday life, for which they are not even aware that this can happen. And it can trigger certain memories or experiences or behaviors that can make the person feel more anxious, or that can make the person feel more depressed. And that there's not, like, there might not be a support system in place to allow for people to take care of these issues. One of the things that I think is absolutely necessary is to pay attention to our own needs, our own history of trauma, our own triggers and activations. So we know when one of these things happen, that we can identify it, we can put a name to it, and we can say, right now, what the other person is doing to me, or what the other person is saying, or how the other person is behaving, is triggering a response in me that reminds me of a time when I wasn't feeling good, or it reminds me of something that made me feel sad or uncomfortable or fear, afraid, right? So all these things are things that can happen on board. And if we don't have the support system, we don't have the resources, it can escalate and become something bigger. One of the things that I talk about when I talk about trauma is that it's not just the event that happens for the person. It's not like, okay, I'm being sexually abused or harassed, or I'm being treated badly, I'm being bullied. I feel like I can't talk to my friends because I have some there's no internet, or maybe there's no connection and I'm isolated in the middle of the ocean. All these things, if we don't really pay attention to it, can develop into very, very, very uncomfortable feelings. And what do we do with uncomfortable feelings? Usually, and this is very general, we as human beings don't like to feel pain, don't like to feel suffering. And we develop mechanisms of dealing with pain and suffering. So every one of us has installed in our bodies a nervous system that knows how to react and how to respond to pain, to discomfort, and not just physical pain and discomfort, but emotional and psychological pain and discomfort. So this is what we call trauma responses. If something happens to us in which we're being rejected, we're being abandoned, we're being isolated, we're being bullied, we're being disrespected, in which we are maybe being threatened in some way. These are just examples of some things that can happen. We develop through our bodies and through our nervous system responses to defend ourselves, to survive in situations that are difficult. When the environment that we live in, and this happens on boats a lot, the level of noise, the level of maybe the environmental issues that might be dangerous or that might be unpredictable are present when we're surrounded with people that maybe we don't know, or we don't really understand so well, or that we don't trust. All the situations can trigger and can augment, can increase our level of discomfort. What we do, we develop ways of defending ourselves against that. So this is the classical response that I'm sure most of you have heard of: fight, flight, or freeze. This is very important that we do that, because in our responses of fight, flight, or freeze, we are protecting ourselves, we are defending ourselves from pain and from suffering and from the dangers that are coming in, and it makes us survive, right? So this is all good and fine. The problem is that when we keep having this trauma responses, these survival mechanisms ongoing. So imagine being on boat, imagine being with your crew, imagine being with your community, but because you've been feeling a danger or discomfort or in pain, the way that you're reacting with everyone around you is through fighting, through fleeing, or through freezing. And it goes on and on and on and on, even when the discomfort stops, even when the danger is over. And that's when we develop trauma. So it's not so much the event itself, but what we do with it and the way that it affects our relationships every day. So usually when that happens, the first thing that happens is that we feel fragmented, we feel isolated, we feel disconnected. There's a lot of shame that happens. If I am every day waking up and working with the same people and I have nowhere to go, and I am in this container for many, many weeks, what do I do with the things that I'm feeling inside? Do I share it with somebody else? Maybe I'm going to be judged. Maybe I'm going to be criticized. Maybe I'm going to be rejected. Maybe I'm going to be fired. Maybe I'm going to have even bigger consequences. Or do I trust anybody with this? So sometimes that makes us even more isolated. It makes us disconnect from the rest of people. So we're walking around feeling all these things and having to interact and to function with everyone else. And then that creates very, very difficult consequences. So we're feeling ashamed of ourselves. We're feeling depressed. We're feeling sad. We're feeling anxious. And what do we do with that? So in the boating community, I know that a lot of the times the resources that are used for coping mechanisms is drugs and alcohol and addictive behavior. By the way, this happens inland too. That happens off the boat as well. And it's a very, very, very common response to trauma and a very common response to pain and suffering. So we develop, all of us have some sort of addictive behavior, some sort of behavior that pushes the pain away. People, let me know if this sounds familiar to you. People, we tend to dissociate, disconnect from our feelings. We tend to get irritated. We fight with everyone around us. We tend to want to sleep more. And so we feel tired and sleepy all day long. We tend to feel paralyzed and say, oh, I don't know where to go, what to do, how to make decisions. We maybe might have a tendency to have repetitive behaviors over and over and over, doing the same thing. We become obsessed about irrelevant situations. We tend to do addictive behavior like drinking a lot of alcohol, using different kinds of drugs, sexual addictions, shopping, gambling, eating, feeding, food, binge eating, or not eating at all. These are all behaviors that are ways in which we unconsciously, of course, this is not done on purpose, unconsciously use to deal with pain. The way that we avoid feeling pain and feeling uncomfortable with ourselves and with the world is by numbing, sometimes by dissociating, by disconnecting, by pushing feelings away. And this is typical what happens. And why I'm putting such an emphasis here, because sometimes these addictions seem to be the only resource that we have when we're living at sea on a boat with a whole group of people and we have nowhere to go. So we have nothing left except numbing ourselves, disconnecting ourselves, or doing something so we don't feel and we're not in touch with reality. I want to tell you that even though these are very, very common responses and very common behaviors, there is an alternative. Because if we keep living in the trauma world, if we keep living with trauma responses, this is not just going to affect our life on boat and our life when working. It's going to affect also our lives with our families, with our loved ones, when we're on land and when we are doing other things as well. So it's very, very, very important that we really take care of our emotional and psychological well-being. This is like going to the gym in the same way that we should have exercises and routines. We should have exercises and routines for our mental health. So having a really, really good routine of meditation, even if you don't know how to meditate, taking 5 minutes with yourself to breathe, to stay silent, to find a place that makes you feel safe and good in the boat is very important. Having a routine of doing exercises for yourself, moving the body in a way that makes you feel good. Movement, not just moving because you're working, moving because you're allowing your body to take care of itself, is doing exercises, doing some sort of sport is important. Third, having some sort of hobby, some sort of outlet that is creative every day allows you to relax your nervous system, so you don't have to be on guard on and constantly with an alarm set that that you're available for working 24/7. So having some hobby, for example music, for example art, for example dancing, these are crucial things for us to incorporate in our lives, so we can allow our bodies to feel safe, to feel more having a place for release, for disconnection from the stress and the everyday pressure, and listening to music, singing, playing an instrument, dancing, going for walks of leisure, maybe around the boat, without having to talk to other people or take care of other people. Doing some arts and crafts, doing some things with our hands are really, they seem little, but I'm telling you, these are very, very, very serious ways of taking care of ourselves. Another very important thing that I've learned lately, I was with this interesting psychologist called James Nestor. He wrote a book on breathing because of his own experiences of breath. And really breathing, I mean, a whole book on just how to breathe through your nose. And really that's how important it is that we learn how to breathe. Breathing in and breathing out and being mindful of it can change your life completely. It can change the way you sleep. It can change the way you eat. It can change the way your body functions. These are all very, very important elements to incorporate in our lives while we are on the boat, while we are working, while we are doing what we're doing within the community of the seafarers. And of course, that applies everywhere else, but especially true when we are under these conditions. So breathing mindfully, meditation, exercises for the mind and for the body, using creativity such as music, art, dancing. These are all elements that are fundamental for our well-being. One last one is being in touch with nature. People that work on boats have the beautiful advantage of being surrounded with nature, not just the ocean, but also when we are seeing other places where the boat stops, or when we can enjoy a sunset, a sunrise. All of that are really gifts that we can have to use for our well-being. So take the time while you're on the boat to really pay attention to the sunrise, to the sunset, to the waves in the ocean, to the color of the water, to maybe the islands or the landscapes that you have in front of you, and stay there for a moment to really take it in and to allow your body to be washed with beauty. I have a question here. I love questions. Please, 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 let me hear from you. Um, how can I recognize if I'm allowing trauma to affect my daily lives? I love that question. This is from the Clever Traveler. Thank you so much for this question. And this is a question that people ask me a lot. How do I recognize that I have trauma? Because sometimes trauma doesn't have to be, oh, I'm a soldier and I'm coming from war, or my whole life has, my whole family has been killed, or, it doesn't have to be like that. Trauma can be very subtle. So when you find yourself overreacting to situations that seem very, very small, and your response is very, very disproportionate, that's an important sign of trauma. For example, if I come to you and tell you, hey, so how many days are you going to be working next week? And your response is, that's none of your business. Leave me alone. I have no time talking to you. Get away from me, for example. It's like, wow, the way that you're responding to my very simple question is so disproportionate that it's coming from someplace else. So maybe the topic of the schedule of working is so triggering that it's touching on something very traumatic. That's one way of identifying if you're having trauma. Another way is that when you are feeling that in your relationships every day, you are not fully present. In other ways, you are not trusting people. You are isolating yourself. You are really keeping a lot of distance because you're ashamed of something, because you're hiding things about you that are very basic, because you're not trusting that other people are going to be safe to be with, to talk to. I'm not saying everybody, but when you're feeling that about most people around you, that's another way of identifying there must be something going with you. When you are not able to be in touch with the way your body feels, when you feel like there's a disconnect, like there's a line that goes through your neck that says, whatever I'm thinking, I'm not feeling in my body. And whatever I'm feeling in my body, I can't identify what it is. When you don't know how you're feeling, if you're sad, if you're happy, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, if you're fearful, if you're surprised, if you're enjoying, if you have nostalgia, if you are elated, you can't put words into your feelings. That's another way of knowing that you might be experiencing trauma. Another way is that when you're not able to sleep well, when you're having nightmares, a lot of nightmares, and when you're having very discomfort during sleep, when you're not eating properly, when your everyday functions in your body are not there in a healthy way, that's another way that trauma manifests. And one last one is that when you develop pain in your body that is chronic. So you're having stomach aches every day, or you're having chest pains every day, or you're having headaches every day. These kind of things are manifestations of the trauma in our bodies. So what do we do with that? To do with that is that we stop, we pay attention to what our bodies are saying to ourselves. We truly pay attention. We sit with that pain, with that discomfort, with that, and say, okay, what is this about? Why am I reacting the way I'm reacting? How come this is the response that I'm having with myself and with others? Because when you start to do that, even though it's scary, even though it's painful, we can begin to put words into it. Thank you so much. Andrea is asking, I have gone through some trauma and I worry it's affecting my relationship. Is there something I can do? Andrea, thank you so much for that question. When we go through trauma, even if it's small trauma and or it can be big trauma, it always affects our relationships, not just with ourselves, but with others. And I love that you're asking what to do, because most people say, oh, well, I have trauma. There's nothing I can do. This is what I live with. This is my experience. This is what I can get, and I have nothing else. And I'm here to tell you that, yes, there are things you can do. And the first thing to do is to bring that traumatic experience from the background, from the back of your head, from the unconscious into the conscious, meaning bring it in, have it in front of you, identify it, put a name to it, and say, yes, this happened to me. For example, my parents got divorced, and now the way that I relate to my lover, to my partner, to my spouse is informed by the experiences I had with my parents, right? So this is, how do we not let the trauma of the divorce play into my relationship? Um, what do? We name it, we identify it, and we say, I'm gonna be mindful that I'm not gonna repeat the same patterns and the same things to manifest into my new relationship. um I'm saying, like, I don't know if there's more questions. I know that we started with some technical difficulties, but I think we're doing well now. I really, really would love to hear people. I would love to hear other questions, and would love to hear what you have to say. Um, and this is, I know I said a lot of things for the short time that we have, but the most important of all is that we can constantly stay connected with ourselves in a very intentional, in a very conscious way. Because otherwise, the way that we go around in the world is that we keep spreading our problems, our traumas, our difficulties with others in other relationships. And, that's contagious. I always say trauma is contagious and healing is contagious. So if we're walking around, especially if we're a crew member at a boat and we are responsible for people around us, and we have not dealt with our own issues, with our own pain, our own traumas, our own anxieties, our own addictions, we keep connecting with other people through that, through the trauma, through the addiction, through the discomfort, and it spreads. Because if I'm treating you badly, then you go and treat somebody else badly, and then it goes like that, and it's a chain. So the responsible thing to do, especially in this day and age in which there's so much need for peace, for tolerance, for acceptance, for understanding, is that we take responsibility of our own actions, of our own presence, how we show up in the world to deal with ourselves and with others. So my invitation really is to start identifying what are those addictive behaviors and anxieties and triggers that you are repeating and that you're carrying with you, so you can start healing them, so you can relate to others from a healthy place, from a trauma-free place, from a place of truth and authenticity, and not from a place of survival and rejection and disconnection. um, I have a question here, and thank you so much for these questions. I love them. Zoe Linder, do you have any recommendations for dealing with negative memories of previous trauma? Zoe, that's a great question. You know that we all carry memories, and especially when they're difficult and they're traumatic, it really interferes with our everyday lives. So not only the memories in our head, but the memories in our body. Our body keeps a score. My very good friend and colleague Bessel van der Kolk says this, and he has a whole book to explain it. The body keeps the score, meaning even if you don't remember what happened to you, your body remembers. And sometimes it surfaces during sleep, during an interaction, during something, a trigger, and you'll all of a sudden remember things that were negative. So Zoe, how do we deal with negative memories? We take the time and the space to invite them in, because negative memories keep coming up to be attended to. So when we don't pay attention to them, when we keep pushing them under the rug, they're going to keep showing up. The more that you resist, the more that it will persist, right? You know this saying, what resists persists. When the more we keep pushing and avoiding, the more it's going to come in. So the best thing to do is find a safe space, either with a therapist, with a friend, with a family member, and sit with that person and start talking about those negative memories, so they can get processed, they can be aired, and they can be understood and accepted so you can move forward. Let me know if that helps. That's though, and I know Zoe, there was another question that I saw before Zoe, but Zoe, I hope this is helpful. I think there was one more question that I think I saw, but anyway, I can't wait to hear more of your feedback and more about what you have to say. And really, it takes time. This is not an easy thing to do. Please check out my book, The Unexpected Thief of Trauma. It has a lot of exercises, a lot of steps in how to heal trauma, how to go from pain to purpose, from breakdown to breakthrough, to go from the wound of the pain to wisdom, and you might get some answers there. And the invitation again is to open space for this kind of conversation, for this kind of observation, to live a life that is more conscious. One last question. How do you handle an unexpected negative memory or body reaction bubbling up in the immediate situation when it happens? And thank you for that question. That's from Shatswen Shahsan. And the question is, sometimes in the moment we get triggered, and that response, I think what you're saying, that response happens in the moment and it bubbles up, and there's nothing we can do in the moment because it comes from a place that we cannot control. And so in that unexpected moment, it's already happening. And I think what happens is that we get triggered and we get put in a place that takes us back into that negative memory. So the classic example that I'm going to give you is that if I'm a soldier of war and I've lived in a horrible experience of war in which people around me have been killed, in which I've been listening to shotguns and to arms and to all kinds of things. And then the war finishes. I come home. And after a year, it's 4th of July and there are fireworks. The sound of the fireworks, even though I'm in a happy place in the moment, even though I'm doing well, the sound of the fireworks are going to trigger a negative memory or a body reaction that is bubbling up, like you're saying, and it's going to make me react in ways that are so disproportionate and so out of place because of the sound of the fireworks. So it's going to take me right back into war. So that's why the most important thing and the most responsible thing for us is to know and identify those negative memories, not when they're being triggered, but when we are at peace, when we are safe, and when we are able to look into them without being in the situation. So thank you so much for that question. I know this is a lot of information and a lot to do. It takes time, it takes process, it takes really dedicating ourselves to taking care of our mental health, of our healthy mental health. And my invitation is to do that. And there's so many ways to go about it. I'm going to be talking about how to find a good therapist later on today. So tune into that, stay tuned, and we're going to be talking to you again. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you, Andrea, and the whole crew for doing this. I appreciate it.